Imagine it's late on a Friday. A tenant calls with a bill that's double their usual month. You grab a flashlight, you walk the plant, and you find a meter feed tied to the wrong tenant riser. Simple routing mistake, expensive consequence. That kind of late-night discovery is what we're here to prevent. Built to last, wired with intention, secured for the real world.
Welcome back to Built, Wired and Secured. I'm Alex Morgan. Today we're focused on a governance-first playbook for metering and telemetry verification, what to inventory at handover, 3 quick acceptance checks you can run in under an hour, and how to document evidence so billing platforms get trustworthy inputs. Quick scope reminder up front. This episode stays operational and vendor neutral. We won't be giving legal advice, meter calibration procedures, or naming vendors or tenants.
My guest is Michael Harrington, a senior property manager who lives in the weeds of building operations and has a nose for single points of failure. Michael, thanks for joining.
Glad to be here, Alex. From an operational standpoint, this is the kind of problem that keeps property teams awake. What breaks if this goes down? Well, tenants feel this immediately, and it can spiral into distrust and expensive disputes if you don't have simple checks in place early on.
Before we dig in, listeners, we put a 1-page metering verification checklist on the Built, Wired, and Secured resource hub. Download it after the episode to follow along and capture the items we discuss. Okay, segment 1, what to inventory at handover. Michael, what's the minimum set of artifacts a property team needs to collect the moment meters and submeters get handed over?
Start with the basics. A physical inventory of meter types and where each sits on the property. Note serial numbers, visible model identifiers, and take a photo with timestamps so you have visual evidence tied to a time. Label demarcations matter. Record where the ownership boundary is, whether the meter sits inside a tenant riser, a meter room, or with a third-party meter cabinet. From an operational standpoint, also ask for ownership records and any calibration certificates the vendor or installer provides, but only as documents. You don't need to validate calibration yourself here. Just collect the paperwork so there's traceability.
That emphasis on traceability sounds right. Photos, serials, label demarcations, and documented ownership. Anything about telemetry endpoints or data pipelines we should capture in this inventory?
Yes. Record where telemetry exits the meter. Is it a direct modem, a gateway in a comms room, or handed off to a building management system? Capture endpoint identifiers, the system or platform name generically. Don't record credentials. And note the time zone and clock source if it's available. Finally, collect contact points. Who handed over the meter, who is responsible for data ingestion, and who owns billing decisions. That chain of responsibility is as useful as the meter photos when a question comes up later.
Great. Segment 2. Quick cross-checks and acceptance tests you can run right away. You promise 3 lightweight tests. Walk us through them and what a pass or fail looks like.
The 3 I use are simple and fast. First, a 30-minute baseline load comparison. Pick a low activity window, late evening or early morning. Record the meter's energy or demand for 30 minutes and compare it to expected baseline from historical data or a neighboring meter. If a meter is suddenly showing twice the expected baseline, that's a red flag that something's misrouted or configured incorrectly.
So the idea is not to diagnose calibration, but to detect anomalous magnitude that suggests misrouting or a data alignment problem.
Exactly. Second test, a meter-to-meter correlation spot check. If 2 meters are measuring the same physical circuit at different points, run a simultaneous read for a short window and compare patterns. Not just totals, but whether the shapes of the demand curves line up. If curve shapes diverge a lot, that's operational evidence of a mismatch in what each meter is actually measuring.
And the third?
A timestamp alignment check. Pull the latest timestamped readings from the meter, the gateway, and the ingesting platform. Are the timestamps aligned to the same clock and time zone? If your meter says readings happened at 000 UTC and your billing platform interprets them as local time, you get shifted or duplicated data. A pass looks like matching timestamps within the expected reporting cadence. A fail looks like consistent offsets or missing entries in one system.
Those are great. quick baseline, correlation patterns, and timestamp alignment. For teams wondering what to do if a test fails, what's the operational next step before you involve outside specialists?
First, document the failure with the same evidence mindset. Photos, time-stamped exports, and a short narrative describing what you did and what you observed. Second, isolate whether it's a routing issue, a data export issue, or a platform interpretation issue. Often, the evidence points to a mislabeled meter or a miswired feed. If it looks like a simple routing or label issue, tag it as a maintenance work order and retest after the fix. If the data pipeline itself shows missing or altered points, escalate to the data owner and preserve the raw exports for later review.
That feeds into segment 3, the data handoff and dispute avoidance. How do you document the chain of evidence so that later, if billing questions arise, you've got an auditable trail?
Create a single handover packet per meter. Include the meter photo with serial number, the ownership boundary notes, the export of the initial acceptance test results, a timestamp alignment snapshot, and a named point of contact for data ingestion. Store that packet in a shared facility folder and reference it in the O&M so that routine bill runs link back to the packet. Importantly, make the packet part of the acceptance criteria. If the meter goes live for billing, it needs a completed packet. That keeps the billing platform from consuming unverified inputs.
And when should teams trigger an escalation versus handling it internally?
Escalate when a discrepancy could materially affect tenant billing or when you can't reproduce or resolve the anomaly with operational checks. Define a materiality threshold up front, maybe a percentage difference or a dollar threshold, and use that as your trigger. Also, if you see repeated intermittent anomalies, treat that as higher priority. The goal is to avoid letting small, unresolved differences compound into a dispute months later.
Let's ground this with 2 short anonymized examples. First, a success story, where a quick check stopped a problem from becoming a dispute.
We had a new tenant move in, and the building's submetering was turned on the day they occupied. During the 30-minute baseline check, we noticed the meter reported a continual load that didn't match the tenant's expected startup profile. We checked the photos and the serials and found the meter had been swapped with an adjacent riser during installation. Because we documented the serials and ran the quick baseline, we caught it the same day, corrected the wiring, and avoided a month of incorrect bills and a tenant relationship headache.
And the cautionary example?
A property didn't keep handover photos or timestamps. Months later, a tenant disputed a billing spike. The team couldn't demonstrate where the meter was installed at the time of the spike, and the billing provider and the tenant each had different read histories. That dispute dragged on while the building ate the operational cost of sorting the records. If they'd capped a simple handover packet, the mismatch would have been resolvable in days instead of months.
Those stories make the case. Small verification steps up front save time, money, and relationships later. For listeners who want to act immediately, what are 3 things a team can run this week?
1. Run a 30-minute baseline check during a low-activity window and compare it to expectations. 2. Photograph and log meter serial numbers and ownership demarcations with timestamps, then store them in a single handover packet. 3. Add a metering acceptance line to your O&M checklist that requires a completed packet before any meter is used for billing.
All great actionable steps. Remember, folks, we have a 1-page metering verification checklist on the Built, Wired, and Secured Resource Hub that walks through those 3 actions and the inventory items Michael mentioned. Download it after the episode and make it part of your next handover.
And if you can, keep your evidence standard lightweight. The point isn't to become metrology experts overnight. It's to create repeatable, auditable habits so small errors don't become disputes. Tenants feel billing issues immediately. Catch them early.
That wraps our episode. Thanks, Michael, for walking through such practical operational controls. For listeners, visit the Built, Wired, and Secured Resource Hub to download the metering verification checklist and the examples we referenced. Stay curious, stay evidence-driven, and remember, small checks now prevent big disputes later. Built to last, wired with intention, secured for the real world.